I stood in front of the mirror, my hand trembling as I wiped away tears that refused to stop. At 69 years old, after 45 years of marriage and 2 long years of mourning my husband's death, I finally felt something I thought I had lost forever. Joy. Pure, unfiltered joy. The cream-colored walls of my new home glowed softly around me, carrying the scent of fresh paint and polished wood. For the first time in my life, I owned something that was entirely mine, not shared with anyone, not borrowed, not subject to someone else's approval, just mine. I had saved $5,000 penny by penny, denying myself small pleasures for decades, and spent every bit of it on this little country house, a sanctuary with 2 bedrooms, a modest garden waiting to bloom, and wide windows that opened to golden fields. It wasn't much, but it was everything I had ever wanted: peace, freedom, and dignity. That morning I had brewed coffee in my own kitchen, listening to birds sing outside. I watered the potted plants I had bought in town, already picturing where my favorite rocking chair would sit by the window. Each detail, no matter how small, whispered one truth. I had finally done something just for myself. But as quickly as that joy arrived, it began to slip away. The phone rang while I was arranging my few clothes in the closet. Rebecca, my daughter, appeared on the screen. I smiled, thinking she might congratulate me on this new chapter. Instead, her sharp, commanding voice cut through my peace like a blade. "Mom, get ready. In an hour, I'll be there with 20 people from David's family. Make food for everyone and prepare our rooms. We're staying for 2 weeks." My body froze. 20 people. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. "Rebecca," I stammered, "I just moved in. I don't have food or space for so many." But she cut me off with practiced indifference. "Don't be dramatic, Mom. They're family now. You have an obligation to host them. Besides, why buy such a big house if not for us to use? Don't be selfish. We'll be there soon." And with that, she hung up. I stood there staring at my trembling phone, my happiness evaporating into smoke. My refuge, my dream, was about to be turned into a free hotel for people who didn't even bother to ask. I opened my refrigerator in despair. 3 eggs, half a gallon of milk, 2 tomatoes, and a small piece of cheese. My pantry held 1 can of beans, another of tuna, and a half-empty bag of rice. Enough for me, yes, but nowhere near enough for 20 people. I thought of Rebecca's words, how she'd always treated my resources as hers. After my husband's funeral, when I was at my lowest, she had walked into my apartment with boxes, taking his books and even the gold watch that belonged to his father. "You don't need these anymore, Mom," she had said, smiling condescendingly. And I had let her. For years, I had been available at her convenience, babysitting, lending money, cooking, cleaning. Never once asked if I could or wanted to. Always giving, always being taken. Still shaking, I grabbed my purse and drove into town. I spent almost all the $300 I had left after buying the house, filling a cart with cheap food: rice, beans, pasta, tomato sauce, bread, vegetables, anything to stretch. $240 gone in one desperate sweep. I returned with barely 20 minutes before they arrived, throwing pots of rice and pasta onto the stove with tears streaming down my face. Tears not of onions, but of rage, helplessness, and the hollow ache of being used once again. When the cars arrived, chaos spilled into my quiet garden. Children ran and screamed. Adults laughed, pulling coolers and suitcases as though checking into a resort. Rebecca barked orders like the mistress of the house, telling me Emily and her baby would take my master bedroom, while she and David would settle into the other. The rest, she announced, could sleep in the living room. I was left with the sofa, My own bed taken without a glance, my privacy dismissed like it meant nothing. In the kitchen, I served what food I had, running out of plates after 8 servings and using bowls and even pot lids for the rest. Still, it wasn't enough. "Is this all?" Noah, David's brother, sneered at his plate. "No meat? No chicken?" I tried to explain I had no time or money, but David interrupted smoothly. "Mary, you could have made more of an effort. You have a big house now. Surely you have money saved." If only they knew or cared that I had already spent nearly everything. Their criticism continued through the night, demands piling higher. Diapers, formula, baby food, mosquito repellent, beer, cigarettes, meat for a barbecue. Each request another weight pressing down on my chest. That night, while 20 people snored comfortably under my roof, I lay awake on the sofa, my back aching, my heart burning. I stared at the ceiling and finally saw the truth. This wasn't love. This wasn't family. It was exploitation. For decades, I had confused being needed with being loved, but they weren't the same. They didn't care about me. They cared about what I could provide. Something in me, long buried under years of submission, began to stir. A spark of indignation I hadn't felt in years. I didn't know yet what I would do, but for the first time I knew this much. Something had to change. At dawn, I rose from the stiff sofa with aching bones and a back that felt years older than the rest of me. I shuffled to the kitchen in search of coffee, praying for a moment of peace, but even there I found Noah rummaging through my refrigerator as if it were his own. "Where's the coffee, Mary? The kids want cereal," he said casually, already rearranging what little I had left. When I told him I had no cereal, his laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Then you'd better go to town to buy real food. The children can't eat nothing." His words carried the tone of authority, as though I were a servant failing at her duties. Before I could respond, Emily entered, her baby fussing in her arms. Without hesitation, she dumped a bag of soiled clothes onto my counter. "Mary, you'll need to wash these today. The baby had accidents last night." I opened my mouth to protest, but she cut me off with a cheerful shrug. "It's easier for you to do it here than for me to carry it all back." The pile of laundry sat there, sour and heavy, another insult added to the growing list. Soon the children poured in, their small voices piping up with hunger, tugging at my heart even as their parents stood idly by waiting for me to fix everything. By the time Rebecca descended from my bed where she had slept comfortably all night, I was already simmering inside. She smiled as though nothing was amiss. "Good morning, Mom. Is breakfast ready? David doesn't like to wait." When I told her I had no food for a feast, she waved a dismissive hand. "We've talked about this already. You need to be more organized. We are 20 people. You can't improvise." Then David appeared behind her, his arm around her shoulders and that insufferable grin plastered on his face. "Mother-in-law," he said smoothly, "if you're going into town, bring cigarettes, beer, and charcoal. We'll have a barbecue tomorrow." Their audacity was staggering. I stood frozen, clutching the edge of the counter for balance. Paul and Robert joined in, cheerfully suggesting I buy enough meat for 30 people so they could invite more relatives from nearby. My breath caught in my chest. 30 people. A feast that would cost more than $500. I whispered that I couldn't afford it, but Emily rolled her eyes. "Don't be stingy. It's a family gathering. Surely you can spare the money. After all, we're saving you from loneliness." That word, loneliness, echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. I had never felt more alone than I did standing in a kitchen full of people who claimed to be family, yet saw me only as a resource to exploit. The final blow came when I caught the children trampling my young tomato plants outside, destroying in minutes what I had planted with such hope the day before. "Children, please be careful!" I shouted, rushing to the window. Noah's voice answered mockingly from the yard. "Let them play!" That's why we came here. They need freedom. Freedom, I thought bitterly, at the cost of my peace, my garden, and my dignity. As I washed dishes with trembling hands, Rebecca approached. "Mom, I need to talk to you," she said in that superior tone she had perfected. "David's family feels like you're not making them feel welcome. The food is too simple, and the house feels cold, as if you don't want us here. This is your chance to bond with them. You should be grateful they want to spend time with you." I nearly dropped the plate in my hand. Grateful? Grateful for being invaded, drained, and treated like a maid in my own home? Her words cut deeper than any insult. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing as snores filled the house. I realized, with startling clarity, that the thread of my life had frayed over decades of saying yes when I wanted to say no. Each sacrifice, each dismissal, each theft of my time and money had chipped away at me until I hardly recognized myself. But lying there on the sofa, my body aching, I also realized something else. I could still take back control. The next morning, I rose before dawn and left quietly, telling them I would shop in town. But I didn't head straight to the supermarket. Instead, I walked into a small cafe, ordered a proper cup of coffee, and sat in silence for the first time in days. The waitress noticed my weary face. "Rough morning?" she asked kindly. "Family," I whispered. She gave me a knowing smile. "Sometimes they hurt us the most." Her simple words struck me like lightning. Fueled by that truth, I went to the lawyer's office I had noticed the day before. Jeremy Stone listened intently as I poured out the story. He nodded, scribbling notes, then looked me in the eye. "What you are describing is abuse. Family or not, you have rights. They are trespassing if they refuse to leave, and if they are lodging here, you have the right to charge them for it." His words were both shocking and liberating. For the first time, someone named what was happening: abuse, exploitation. And for the first time, someone gave me tools to fight back. I left his office with documents outlining lodging rates, legal options, and my rights as a homeowner. From there, I went to the bank. The manager confirmed what I already feared. I had spent over $500 in 2 days. My account balance had dwindled to less than $300. At this pace, I would be bankrupt within a week. He offered to help me set spending limits to protect myself. I accepted gratefully, realizing I needed more than strength. I needed systems that made it impossible for them to bleed me dry again. Finally, I bought only the essentials at the store: $50 worth of beans, rice, pasta, and a few vegetables. No luxuries, no beer, no cigarettes, no meat for 30 people. When I returned, the complaints were immediate. "Where's the barbecue meat?" Paul demanded. "The beer," David added. "The cigarettes?" Robert barked. I stood in the doorway with my bags of groceries and, for the first time in decades, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. "I bought basic food," I told them calmly. "Enough so no one starves, but nothing else. I don't have the money." Rebecca's face twisted in disbelief. "Don't lie, Mom. We know you have savings. Stop being stingy." My hands shook as I pulled out my bank statements and laid them on the table. In 2 days, I've spent over $500. This is all I have left. There are no secret savings. This is the truth. Silence fell as they read the proof. Then David smirked. "Well, then we'll all contribute." "Excellent," I said, reaching into my bag and pulling out the documents Jeremy had prepared. "Here are the lodging rates for this property. $100 per room per night, $50 per person per day for meals, $20 per day for utilities. So far, you owe me $2,800. The room erupted in outrage, voices shouting over one another. But inside me, there was only calm. For the first time in my life, I had drawn a line in the sand. Their voices rose in a chaotic storm, 20 people shouting at once, accusing me of cruelty, greed, betrayal. Rebecca's voice pierced the noise above the rest. Mom, you've lost your mind! Charging your own family? Dad would roll in his grave if he saw this. Her words meant to stab had the opposite effect. They strengthened me. My husband had spent his life working to ensure I would have security and dignity. He would never have allowed his family to treat me like a servant. Emily's dramatic sobs filled the room, her baby wailing in her arms. You're heartless, Mary! My baby needs stability, and you're throwing us into the street. Her tears, once enough to make me surrender, now felt like another act in a play I had watched too many times. I answered with calm clarity. What your baby needs are parents who can provide for him, not an elderly woman drained of every resource. If you cannot afford a vacation, you should not take one. Noah stepped forward, his face dark with anger. You're going crazy. Maybe you need medical help. I met his glare without flinching. You're right. This is not the Mary you knew. The old Mary allowed herself to be exploited. That Mary is gone. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. The balance of power in the room was shifting. Paul tried a softer tactic. Mary, let's be reasonable. $2,800 is outrageous. We'll give you something symbolic, $200 for the entire stay. I repeated his words slowly, savoring their absurdity. $200 for 20 people. For 14 days, for lodging, meals, utilities, and cleaning. That's less than 18 cents per person per day. Martha, my neighbor, chose that moment to appear at the door with a basket of vegetables. She had come to welcome me, but her timing was divine. She stepped into the tense silence, her sharp eyes scanning the crowded room. What a big family, she said warmly, though her tone carried an edge of knowing. I hope you're all contributing to expenses. It must cost a fortune to host so many. The awkward silence that followed spoke volumes. They're not contributing? She asked, genuine surprise coloring her voice. How odd. In my day, when you visited family, you always brought something or pitched in, especially if you arrived in such numbers. Rebecca muttered. But we're family. Martha smiled with gentle firmness. All the more reason. Family should be the first to respect each other's limits. Her words landed like stones in a pond, rippling through the room. I invited her to coffee, grateful for her presence. In the kitchen, away from the others, she whispered, Honey, those people aren't here out of love. They're here for convenience. True family doesn't exploit you. Her quiet support was the balm I hadn't known I needed. When we returned, Rebecca and David were whispering furiously with the others. Finally, David spoke. All right, Mary. We'll give you $200, but no contracts. We're family. I smiled, calm and steady. If this is now a financial arrangement, then it requires a contract. I've prepared one. I laid Jeremy's papers on the table. For $200, you get lodging on the living room floor, one basic meal a day, and scheduled bathroom access. Anything more falls under the premium package. The room exploded again, shouts of outrage bouncing off the walls. This is insane, Emily shrieked. 1 meal a day? I kept my voice level. Yes, that is what $200 covers. If you want more, you can pay the original rates. If you don't like it, you're free to leave and find other lodging. Rebecca's face twisted with fury. Mom, this is embarrassing. People will say you destroyed your own family for money. I leaned forward, my voice steady. No. People will see that I stopped allowing myself to be used. I know the difference now between love and exploitation. The threats began next. Robert's voice dropped low, almost menacing. Mary, think carefully. There are many of us, and you're alone. You don't want to make enemies in your own family. Once, those words would have cowed me. Now I met his gaze with unwavering calm. Are you threatening me in my own home? Because if you are, then you're proving my point. You're not here for family. You're here to exploit. Even the children, hungry and confused, were pulled into the charade. Grandma, what's for breakfast? One of the twins asked plaintively. I looked at their parents. Your children are hungry. The rice and beans are in the kitchen. You may cook for them. The adult stared in disbelief, as though the concept of responsibility was foreign. We don't know how to cook, Emily whined. Then you can take them into town. There are restaurants. That was the breaking point. David stood abruptly. Enough. We're leaving. Pack your things, Rebecca. She froze, panic flickering in her eyes. But where will we go? We don't have reservations. We'll find something, he snapped. Anything is better than staying here. I remained seated as they rushed about, stuffing clothes into bags, muttering angrily under their breath. Rebecca paused at the door, her face pale with fury. Mom, you'll regret this. When you're alone and sick, don't come crawling to us for help. I met her eyes with the strength I didn't know I still had. I would rather be alone with dignity than surrounded by people who don't respect me. One by one, they filed out, their cars disappearing down the road. This time, there were no tears from the children, no pleas for me to change my mind, just the silence of resignation. For the first time in years, I stood in my home and felt something I had forgotten. Peace. That evening, Martha returned with chicken stew. We ate on the porch, watching the sunset paint the fields. She listened as I described the confrontation, nodding with approval. Do you feel good about your choice? She asked gently. I smiled, my heart lighter than it had been in decades. I feel free, I said simply. And I meant it. 6 months later, my little country house no longer felt like a battlefield, but a sanctuary. The garden I had once watered with tears now thrived with vibrant blooms and neatly tended rows of vegetables. Each morning, I woke at 6 a.m. to birdsong instead of the shouts of ungrateful relatives. I brewed my modest cup of coffee, opened the windows to let the fresh air in, and looked out at the fields with gratitude instead of dread. For the first time in decades, my days belonged to me. Rebecca called occasionally, but her tone had changed. The first few times she demanded money or babysitting, just as she always had. But when I calmly replied, I'm sorry, my love, but I can't help you with that, she would rage, cry, and hang up. The guilt trips that once pierced my heart now rolled off me like raindrops on glass. After a while, her calls became less frequent. Silence, I discovered, was not loneliness. It was peace. My neighbors, especially Martha, became the family I had always dreamed of. She visited often, bringing fresh eggs from her hens or pies she had baked. Together we planned our gardens, traded recipes, and sometimes simply sat in companionable silence on my porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. There was no manipulation, no exploitation, only genuine kindness. It reminded me that love and respect are not measured in blood, but in actions. I even began painting classes at the community center. At 69 years old, I held a brush for the first time, not because someone told me to, but because I wanted to. The colors I spread on canvas felt like freedom itself, messy, imperfect, but mine. The other women in the class became friends, and together we laughed about our mistakes and cheered each other's progress. With every brushstroke, I rediscovered the self I had buried beneath decades of sacrifice. The lesson life had taught me came not in a whisper but in a roar. Love without respect is not love, and giving without boundaries is not generosity. It is slavery. For years, I mistook being needed for being valued, but I see the difference clearly now. True family, whether born or chosen, lifts you up instead of draining you. They don't measure your worth by what you provide, but by who you are. Looking back, I don't regret buying this house with my $5,000 of savings. It's not just wood, walls, and a roof. It is a symbol of my freedom, a declaration that even at nearly 70, I can claim my life, my dignity, and my joy. Sometimes, standing in the quiet garden I built with my own hands, I feel my late husband's presence. I imagine him smiling, proud that I finally learned a lesson he tried to teach me all those years. Your life is yours. Protect it. So now, when I sip my coffee on the porch or plant a row of daisies by the fence, I remind myself that it is never too late to set boundaries, to demand respect, to choose peace. I am proof that even after years of being silenced and used, you can still reclaim your voice. You can still live free. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Would you have stood up to your family like I did? Or would you have chosen silence for the sake of peace? Share your experiences in the comments. I read every one. Don't forget to like this video. Share it so others may find courage too. And subscribe for more stories like this. Together, we can remind each other that dignity has no age limit, and it's never too late to reclaim your life.